to get a real perspective on refereeing and how the game has changed over the years and how players and managers have to adapt to that, there's no better man, more experienced man to talk to than the West Ham United manager, Sam Allardyce. Sam, you were the archetypal good old-fashioned centre-half. Is that partly because of good old-fashioned refereeing?
I think that changing times, of course, are something that happens in life. Society changes, life changes, the game changes along with the way we all move forward today. Technology, sports science, sports psychology these days all come into play. But I think that I think what we had then is, and I say to many people, like, wouldn't you like to be a player today? And I actually say no, not really. I would prefer to stay in the era I stayed in because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And the players today cannot have the fun that we had, can't have the camaraderie that we had, and everybody seems to think it's all about the money. Well, yes, the money is fabulous. It's huge, but it doesn't make you happy. It's nice to have it, but in our time, what went on the field and what went on in training was much more enjoyable. What went on in the dressing room is much more enjoyable than today's football, by the fact that how social media, how the game has evolved and how the game has developed, which is the same, I think, for referees. The scrutiny, the ever watching cameras in every single angle, the opinion of all punditries all across the world puts us under the microscope that bit more. So we lose that little bit of a personal touch, I think, not just of players but player to referee. The sort of language that went on between us and the referees in my time was give and take, good banter, a good relationship with the referee, as best we could, and he was the man manager. And I think we forget that today, that the manager of the team is the referee on the day, and if his man management skills are not sufficiently enough to hold the attention of the players, then that's where we can run into trouble. So we can talk about the rules and the regulations, and applying the rules and the regulations the right way is obviously important, but the man management of that squad of, or those two teams of players, is probably a critical mass that maybe we're missing out on by the fact that we're moving forward in the world of football. The scrutiny and everybody talk about the right thing or the wrong decision, but forgetting about the man management side of it.
Yeah. And there was a legendary referee from your part of the world called Neil Midgley, wasn't there? And I think represented everything that
everything
you're
you're talking about. It didn't matter then if referee Neil managed Bolton Wanderers, which he did quite a few times. You know what I mean? He wasn't favourable to Bolton Wanderers. He wasn't favourable to anybody. I don't think that's the case today in refereeing. I think that he's refereed the quite way. But I mean, you'd talk about how many bad decisions he would make, and he'd tell you how bad you were playing. He said, "Well, you better shut up the way you're playing today." You know what I mean? So I mean, but that can answer it in one. That it gives you. I think it. That gives you a lot of respect for the guy. He's got a little bit of wit and can calm a very, very, sometimes very, could be difficult situation down. And I think that, unfortunately, that's been managed out. Like many things in society have been managed out that can't happen now, which is probably a great shame. But it's the way the game has moved forward.
Yeah, no names, no pack drill. But any referee who does make a flippant, off-the-cuff remark these days, it tends to be lit red, doesn't it? And maybe used against him, which damages the game, do you feel? Spirit of the...
Well, I can blame the TV for that, because I don't think they should go there, and they shouldn't go panning right on. We're getting all this now, aren't we? We're getting managers on the touchline, talking about this, doing that. What I mean, because there's a lot happening in a game of football, and what we have to remember is it's a man's game. And will always be a man's game, and there's some industrial language that has to be allowed to be used. I think that.
Are you doing this?
You know what I mean? I can't remember to do it sometimes. My wife keeps reminding me and saying, "I looked at your lips and saw what you were saying. Why don't you put your hand over your mouth?" But I can't remember because I'm immersed in the game. I don't know what's going on to the left or the right. I'm immersed in the game as a manager when it's going on and watching everything that happens.
You say it's a man's game in a particular area of staying on your feet. If you can stay on your feet, taking a knock as you did, and if you went down, you were seriously injured. But that's not the case today, now, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, in many cases, it's if you like, which has been many years now. Sort of the foreign player was seen to be, in the earlier days, the one that would be the one. But realistically, when I look back in my time, there were the players who used to do that, like your Franny Lees and all that. Like, I mean, perhaps not as many. So it was always been apparent in the game, but it's sort of, the game now is a non. It's becoming, what really worries me, it's almost becoming a non-contact sport, and that becomes, I find that particularly dangerous. I think that.
Could you have survived it yourself as the player you were?
Yes, I think so. I think you think you talk about how you have to evolve as the game evolves, and I think that if I have had what we deliver today, I would be able and coping in this level of football, because we had a manager, we had an assistant manager, we had an old player that was supposed to be the physio, but he was the sponge man, really. Didn't know too much about injuries, and that was it. We didn't have no video or DVD or analysis. We didn't have no sports science and no nutrition. We used to eat in Robbie's Cafe over the road. We had £1.25. We'd have steak, pie, chips and peas, and we'd be training in the afternoon. You know what I mean? So I think the way it's evolved for the right way, on the way that the players look after themselves, I think, and we had that, you'd absorb that, you'd learn from that, and certainly I would. But the game changes, and where we say now to the players, realistically, tackling is a dying art, because you can make a perfectly good tackle today, and sometimes you know it's going to be a yellow card, even though it's a perfectly timed tackle.
The interpretation's changed. If you got the ball in any way first, it wasn't a foul, was it? But that isn't the way it's interpreted now.
Yeah, but they're making an interpretation, not the referees, by the people who do the laws of the game, that simply cannot be implicated. A player can't play the ball and stop.
No.
The momentum has to carry on through the player.
Yeah.
And if they're saying that's too vigorous, it's a foul. It's just an incredible rule to me. It's the most bizarre one of them. I mean, that and the offside rule now are the two most bizarre rules in the game, which are incredibly non-productive in the game. I also haven't seen a player in the last 5 or 6 years get injured with a two-footed tackle.
But do you agree, though, that it's got to be stamped out?
Well, I agree it's got to be stamped out, but it's the ones that missed are the more dangerous ones, i.e. Chelsea, Barnes on Matic. They're the ones that break legs. Generally, the two-footed tackle looks bad, doesn't look right. It is wrong, but it's not normally the one that injures the player. And I mean, if they looked at the stats on injuries, you'd find that there's very few players. There's more players get injured by the player that might stand up and just go over that ball and just hit you on the shin when you're coming together with that force. But I think there's less controversial tackles now than ever before, but they are highlighted. So I think the game has moved on that way with less controversial tackles.
If there was one law that you would like to change or adapt, what would it be?
Oh, it'd have to be the offside law. I mean, it's a confusing element of the game that confuses not only us as professionals, but also I think it confuses the interpretation in that split second. They've got so much to go through the mind, the assistant referee, the referee, that they cannot get consistency. We look for consistency across the board in decision making. Absolutely, yeah, because it's wait and see who's doing this and who's doing that. And I get that if we said that if somebody was offside in the far corner, they had to be given offside in the old days. So all right, let's just stop that then. But when they're in and around the box and they're offside, they're offside. Yeah. And again, probably non-football people making this regulation that doesn't really help or promote the game, because everybody talks about the controversy of that incident, not about the great play that happened. It'll get to how good the game was, but the first thing will be the controversial incident today.
The TV analysis
You know what I
is
mean? It's about
stopping
the
the goal.
you know what I mean?
And
And
the goal wasn't stopped.
you know what I mean? And that takes away from, you know, what a very entertaining football match is when there's a controversial incident in there whether the referees, particularly if the referee or the assistant has got it wrong in a crucial area, and a lot of is because of the way we are reported around that first before the great game that has just happened before us that you've just watched. You know what I mean?
Great chat. I really enjoyed it, Sam. Thanks
Pleasure.
very much.